Welcome back to the Hogsty, where we're here to give you the latest and greatest from the world of the Washington Redskins and the NFL. OTAs and minicamp concluded this past week, and we'll be chatting about who's looking good coming out of the various position group battles we saw taking place, with a keen eye at that outside linebacker and safety position. Meanwhile, head coach Jay Gruden surprised some people when he announced that offensive line coach Bill Callahan would be calling some plays next year, adding another voice to an already convoluted play-calling process. What could possibly go wrong? In other news, former Redskins quarterback Jason Campbell retired this week at the age of 32, and we'll chat about his contributions to the team. And lastly, are you feeling broke? Don't worry, because Clinton Portis probably owes you some money. We'll get into all of that, plus FedEx Field and why it sucks. It's all up next on the Hogsty.
It's the Hogsty.
All right, welcome back. I am here joined with the Hogsty themselves, Steve Thomas.
Hello, everyone. How are you? It's good to be here on a fine Saturday.
Kelly Worrell.
Hey, good to be here on a whatever day you're listening to it on. This is that day, and I hope you're well.
Robbie Duncan.
Hey, everybody.
And Alex Zeese.
I feel like I just saw you guys.
Yeah, that's because you did. My name's Sean Conti, and let's get into it. We've got lots to talk about. A great show for you guys.
Yeah, let's start off with talking about the OTAs. So the OTAs just wrapped up. We had our 2/3 day little camp, and everything coming out of the Redskins, organization was very, very positive, which is nothing new because I believe positive news came out of 32 organizations coming out of this time of the year. It's a very positive time of the year for teams, and their PR people really, really love this time of year. Does anybody have any specific thoughts about who stood out, really well at the OTAs there?
Obviously, I think it's Duke Iheanacho is the one that surprises me the most. Considering he didn't do, diddly poo for us, last year because of his injury and everything else, along with every other safety on the roster we had, it seems like the positivity stemming from him is certainly more than expected. It looks like him and Jerron Johnson are in a battle for the starting slot. So, hey, more competition's good. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and just on that position battle specifically, I think that's such an interesting one. Iheanacho and Johnson are I feel like they're the same player. I guess Johnson's 1 year older, but they both played behind really good safeties, and they both seem to have similar skill sets. I think Iheanacho's a little bit bigger, but they both have had some kind of shady injury backgrounds. I think the thing that sets them apart is Iheanacho played in that Super Bowl. It was a disastrous Super Bowl, of course, but he played there. He had the playing time. We don't really know what we have in Johnson, it seems like. He's kind of an enigma.
I sort of think that we might not know what we have in Johnson as well, but wasn't he a McLuhan pick? Wasn't he a guy that McLuhan picked up back there in Seattle?
He was, yeah.
And I think that might give him the edge, the fact that this, Iheanacho, or Iheanacho, or are we saying Iheanacho? I like Iheanacho.
I don't know.
I don't know. I just like Nacho.
I like I'm a Nacho better. That'd be more fun.
I'm a Nacho. So I'm a Nacho wasn't a McLuhan guy, and so that I think has to give the edge to Johnson, because we already had that guy on the team when we went out and got Johnson. Anyway, so my guess is that Johnson comes out on top in that battle.
Well, I think it's going to be a good battle either way, and you got to look at both of them and say, well, this is a massive upgrade over Ryan Clark. So that in itself is a bit of good news for us. And then let's not forget we already have another solid free safety that we got this year. So. 3 guys competing for 2 spots, that sounds about right to me, and hopefully that, pans out for us.
Yeah, we have a very good problem with depth, which is not something we've normally had to deal with before. So, whoever wins
Especially not at safety. We haven't had that in years.
Yeah, exactly. Especially after however this plays out, with whoever gets the starting spot, we know we got a solid guy coming in after him, and a very solid special teams contributor in Johnson. So at least in that stance, we'll have a very good special teams player and a pretty decent, strong safety that can come in a pinch if he's not the one that's starting. because I mean Duke, take it for what it's worth, he's been the one that's been all over the media with his special tape styles for the cleats and
yeah, how can you not love
he's
that?
been a media darling this past couple weeks and seems to be the favorite right now. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on somebody to, tell Duke that he's wasting too much time, taping cleats and too little time, watching film. But remember, I think it's going to happen. But I think the whole secondary thing is still a big experiment, because remember, these guys are all on one-year contracts. Johnson and who's our strong safety?
Deshaun Goldson's the free safety.
Thank you. Thank you. Free safety. Yeah, Goldston and Johnson are on one-year contracts. We have a slew of kids, who are all youngins who've never played, and then you have Duke. So I think what's happened here is this is a big experiment, and if they arrive at two guys who can actually play and contribute, like average starters at least, those are the guys that may get long-term contracts from us, or maybe none of them.
Yeah.
True story. Well, we'll see. Do we want to also talk about? I mean, another major one coming out of camp, obviously, is the outside linebacker position. Trent Murphy trying to keep Preston Smith off his back. I think the word out of camp sounds like it's like Murphy's gearing up to be the guy. But I mean, isn't that to be kind of expected? He knows the scheme's better for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I think it's you got to give Murphy the edge. He played last year. He played well last year. I think for a rookie coming in who wasn't expected to be a starter. He was expected to take a little time to mature behind Arakpo. Arakpo went down, which is something I guess we all could have predicted at this point. But I think that he stepped up. He held the edge well. He was getting to the quarterback a little bit, and apparently he's coming in. He's put on some weight. He's added some muscle. He hasn't lost any speed, and based on that and the 1 year of experience he's got, you've got to give him the edge. But I really like sort of the same thing that I'm thinking about with the safety position. I really like the fact that in the NFL you don't always just play two safeties. You don't always just play two outside linebackers. You have different packages in different situations, and I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that we've got at least two and it looks like three quality people that we can put on the field in both those positions.
Yeah, and Gruden's been very upbeat about Trent. He's probably been the one that he's talked the most about from what I've seen. Very happy about the weight he put on. If you understand, I understand he was about 257, 256 last season. He's put on the 10 or maybe 11, 12 extra pounds and still moving really well and making plays in this mini camp. So that's a good sign. I mean, yeah, they're not wearing pads, but you want to see development in that kind of stance.
Right. Well, totally. I want to know really how these guys are all going to play together, and the reason why I say that is that we have a stacked. Number one, we're out of a 3-4 base, and we kind of have a stacked interior. D tackles and nose tackle who are long-term contracts who the team likes. Now we've got three guys who are all in the 260 to 270 range, and Kerrigan, Murphy, and Preston Smith. Obviously there's going to be packages where they're going to be rotating in and out, but it seems to me like one of those guys, and it's probably not Kerrigan, is going to be sort of a long-term depth guy more than anything else, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. But all this talk about how we're going to see them on the field extensively, I'm just not getting it. Maybe Robbie can help, or Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Steve. What you're talking about is a little bit of a problem. It's the opposite problem than we've had in the last 20 years in this organization, right? So there was clearly a focus this offseason to start dominating the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball, right? Because without doing that, your cornerbacks are useless. It doesn't matter who they are. Your safeties are useless. It doesn't matter who they are. So, I mean, McLuhan went out and grabbed all of the players that he could, with the exception of Sue. And I'm glad we didn't get that guy because that would have tanked the entire salary. But we've got so many players that we can play on the defensive side of the line now. How do you fit them all on? Maybe you don't. You're rotating in guys that are fresh all the time and capable at the same time, and it's sort of gorgeous.
Yeah. So with Preston Smith, he might be the guy that's our career backup, at least as of now. But the good comparison I have of him, I might have said this before, I don't remember, but You guys know the guy that used to play for the Ravens, Pernell McPhee, the outside linebacker.
Yeah.
Same type of player, big body, moves all around the defensive line and outside linebacker's position, just like a cog that places in any spot you want and makes an impact there. I mean, he had like 8 sacks last season and just got paid big time. So I see him very much being used like McPhee was.
I got one more question for you, Robbie. One of our big weaknesses last year was us all having to watch tight ends run for touchdowns, on every other play. Which one of these outside linebackers between Kerrigan, Murphy, and Smith are going to have at least a competent shot in pass coverage?
That's a good question.
Good question. I guess the edge would go to Kerrigan since he's been there longer and more experienced, but I don't know.
He hasn't done well doing that in the past,
no,
though.
No, he hasn't.
No, he had a knack for making an interception or two every once in a while, but not really straight up coverage.
Right, that usually comes from his batting down of passes.
Right.
Yeah.
Murphy and Smith are going to have to really work on that too.
I heard that
Or I
Smith
wonder
had
if
some
we
skills in that area. I thought I heard in the draft profile when he was coming out that he was able to stand up and get back and get some lateral movement and do pretty well with that. But honestly, I think that most of the time that we were getting burned by tight ends, it was more of a middle linebacker safety combination thing. And so I think that we're going to need some improvement there. And if nothing else, it doesn't matter how great your outside linebackers are in coverage. The reason that they were burning us for touchdowns was because our safeties were terrible. The safety's job is to make sure nobody's burning you for touchdowns, and those guys were tearing us up. So I think that's the improvement that's going to save us there.
Yeah, agreed. And I just wanted to say I love Trent Murphy's quote. Some reporter asked him during OTAs. They were like, "Who's going to start at this position?" I think Trent's quote was like, "It could be anybody. It could be me. It could be Jackson, Trevardo, Preston. They could split Ryan in half and start him on both sides of the ball for all I know."
I don't think
it's
Ryan
like a
would like that.
well-deflected question. Yeah.
Why didn't I think of this before?
Hey, did you guys see the story? Speaking of splitting in half, there was a story out of, somewhere in the United States where a man and a woman are getting a divorce, and the man got mad and sliced all the possessions in half.
Yeah, I saw that. He sawed their truck in half with a
And
chainsaw
sold it on
or something.
eBay or tried to or something like that.
Yeah,
If that's what Trent Murphy's
great.
suggesting we're doing with Ryan, we ought to do with Ryan Kerrigan. That's slightly disturbing.
All right. Well, so do we want to talk about another position group, Alex? I think you had something.
Yeah. The one thing that I found the most interesting was the work that they're doing with the linemen, specifically all the rotating everybody at center for a backup center, except for Sean Laval,
Well, of course.
who apparently can only play left guard and he cannot do anything else. But there was a story, I think it was yesterday, that Callahan said basically everybody else has learned how to play center at this point.
Well, that's just good common practice, right? We have guys go down all the time. I don't know why specifically center. We have 2 backup centers on the roster already who are actually centers, but they want to get everybody. And my guess is that what it tells me is that those 2 guys aren't going to make the team. The only reason you would want your whole offensive line, or at least all the guards, right? They're not doing this with tackles. I think they're only doing it with guards. And the only reason I think they'd be cross-training all those guys to play center is if they don't think too highly of this, of the centers that they've got on the roster.
Well, that could be said, but really, the way it works for offensive line, at least from my experience, is it doesn't really matter about position. Is more so that they want the best 5 out there, and if that means a guard that's normally a guard, but he's the better lineman of the rest, and after the center goes down, then they want to put that better guy there and then plug in the next best guy after that. So
Now, is that true for more just interior guys, or is that would you say that includes
that
your
would include
tackles?
the tackles that they believe can switch down to guard, because they've been doing that with Tom Compton this minicamp too. So I mean, it's really just about making sure you have the best 5 out there and just increasing guys' diversity and versatility is what I meant to say. But it's increasing that so guys have a better chance of making the team. And then you got these true center guys, but if they're not better than these guards that can play center, then that's
now. With that being said, though, when we talk about our top 5 offensive linemen, you now have to put the name Brandon Scherf into the picture. because he's I'm guessing our second best lineman at this point, given the quality we've got. Maybe it's Lichty, but maybe
I'd
it's
say
Scherf.
third.
But right now, I mean, he's playing right tackle. He's still learning to play the position because he played left tackle. Is that correct? Did he play left tackle at Iowa?
Yeah, he did.
So he's adjusting over there. They're not going to mess with that, right? They're not going to say, okay, well, we want to cross train you at guard, or we want to do anything. Right now, he's got to be 100% dedicated, focused to learning his footwork and pivoting and all of that on the right side.
They're not going to move. They're not going to move him to guard unless he completely fails at right tackle.
Okay.
They're going to do their hardest to keep him at right tackle and make sure he gets good at that. And if it doesn't work out, then they'll say, all right, we need you to go to guard now.
Well, Robbie, you just said something interesting in your first comments, in that they want the best five guys out there. And us fans talk about the difference between a guard and a tackle and a right tackle and a left tackle, like it's like, first of all, like we have any idea. You're the only one of us that actually does. Is it really that much of a difference between playing, say, a right guard and a right tackle? In terms of what skills these guys need and what tasks they're performing?
No, I mean, the overall difference between guard and tackle is the way you're kicking in pass sets, and maybe a slightly different thing in angles on the run game, but the biggest difference, in my opinion, would be the pass sets. Guards are setting laterally, like if I have a defensive tackle on my outside shoulder, I'm setting to his nose, like right to his face mask. Tackles, they kick for depth. They're supposed to, at least. They kick for depth, like 2 or 3 steps, and then go from there. Guards, they kick more laterally. They don't kick for depth like you see the tackles do. So I mean, I would find it easier really from a tackle switching to guard, because all they have to do is kick laterally and then just have fast feet. But guards, they'd be an adjustment for them to kick for depth. Like I want to say it was Logan Mankins a couple of years ago, maybe for the Patriots. They switched him from guard to, I think it was left tackle in a pinch because somebody got hurt. I mean, he did well enough because he's a good lineman. He's going to get it done, but he didn't look very comfortable, and that's because he had to kick for depth. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah. So real quick, who's going to be our starting right guard? Is it going to be Spencer Long?
Yeah, I mean, unless he completely fails at it, I don't see anybody else beating him.
Yeah, I think he's winning right now as well. Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of winning by default, though, a little bit, isn't he? I mean, he didn't really show us much last year that I saw.
No.
Did you see good things out of him, Robbie?
I mean, the little bit you saw, it just was, normal stuff. I mean, he didn't absolutely fail at it, but the real thing to really
absolutely failing
might
be
a massive upgrade over anything else we've had at that position in a long time. He didn't absolutely fail. Jeez, put Ring of Honor.
Yeah, better than Chris Chester. But the real way to judge that, how he was doing last year, is if some miracle I was able to get access to the practice tapes, but I wouldn't be able to get that, obviously.
Talk to Bill Belichick.
I mean, they must see a lot in him to really kind of hand him the golden ticket to the starting spot.
Well, or maybe they just saw that Chris Chester was terrible, and Long is a third-round draft pick, and he deserves a shot, and he's getting a shot. Maybe he hasn't really earned it. He's just is getting his shot right now because he's the guy who needs to be getting the shot.
Yeah,
right. And like you said, Steve, I mean, he kind of wins by default because otherwise, who are you going to start, Quanjo?
Not yet.
He's
probably not ready. So I mean, which is not an indictment on him. It's just it seems like the obvious choice.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Do we want to? I mean, we'd probably be remiss not to mention the last position group battle we're seeing, and that's for that backup QB spot. Do we have any final thoughts on the QB battle going on?
Oh Lord.
Just that they haven't been doing very well, from what I've seen. Every observation report from these from the local media guys, very, very hot and cold, mostly cold.
Yeah, it's probably going to be one of those things we'll see in preseason.
Yeah.
And, whoever throws the least amount of screwed up passes will win out that number 2 spot.
I continue to believe that I think McCoy is the guy who should be the backup quarterback, and Cousins should be the
That's where I lean to. I lean towards McCoy.
Yeah, I do too. I think Cousins just wrecked mentally. Yeah, I think he's just wrecked mentally. And McCoy is a vet. He's not going to get too rattled. You know, he has his limitations, namely in his arm strength and his and the physical part. But he's got a better head on his shoulders in terms of his football head, I'll say. So I think long term we ought to be looking at McCoy and Cousins. You know, too bad.
Kirk Cousins has.
I think.
Oh, you go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think you're right that it's going to come down to a preseason battle. I'm wondering, how much Griffin do you think we're even going to see in this preseason, or is it really going to be a competition between McCoy and Cousins the whole way through?
I really want to see a lot of Griffin. I don't know about anyone else.
Yeah.
I need to see some competent footwork and stuff starting to go on in preseason.
We need to see a lot of Griffin, right? So he hasn't played much preseason at all. I think we held him out of most of the last preseason. For injury purposes, and he's never in the same with year two. He couldn't go, right, because he was all in for week one, and that meant not doing anything. And it's it really is. He has never really had the kind of preseason experience and coaching that he needs. We now have a QB coach, which is very, very good. And it's a terrific thing for him as well as for the other guys. But there is no QB coach in the world that is going to make Kirk Cousins not mentally abuse himself to extreme levels after every bad play. I think that Colt McCoy is going to have to be the number 2 guy. I actually felt at the end of the season like he was the number 1 guy. He is the last guy that Gruden had named a starter before he went down with a neck injury. And he wasn't playing terribly. I thought that he had the edge coming into this season, but I think everybody, obviously somebody decided that wasn't going to be the case, and that's probably the right decision.
Yeah. You know, did you guys ever see the movie The Da Vinci Code? And what Kirk Cousins is straight out of the Da Vinci Code to me, because there was the blonde guy who was the bad guy in that movie who was flogging himself. The albino. He was flogging himself, and
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Well, that is Kirk. I can see Kirk Cousins, with barbed wire around his neck and flogging himself. Oh my God, I hit an interception. Yeah,
I really don't want to know where you're going.
That was where I was going with it, but really, I think also everybody's fooling themselves. You think you're going to see a lot of Robert Griffin in the preseason. Think it's going to be the average thing. You're going to see him for a 1 quarter in the first game, 2 quarters in the second game, 3 quarters in the third game, and not at all in the fourth, because that is the way the NFL does it.
The thing, Steve, RG3 hasn't even gotten up to the average in the last couple seasons when it comes to preseason play.
Yeah, but this is the NFL.
It was like he did 1 drive, then 2 drives, then 3 drives. It wasn't whole quarters of anything.
Yeah, maybe, but the NFL doesn't like change, and there's a certain way they do it, and that's the way they do it, and I think that's what we're going to see. It's a pointless argument, it really is.
Part of the thing with this is that I think that a little bit of the control has been taken away from the Griffin camp when it comes to this kind of thing. I think that when he first got into the league, when he first came to the Redskins, he had a lot of say in how Robert Griffin was going to be handled, and there was a lot of back and forth with Shanahan, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to run these plays, and this won't happen, and that won't happen, and I think that the fact that he has not played well has just basically taken all of that power away from him. I really believe that coming into this year, he's either going to need to do what he's told, and if that means playing, more in the preseason, or if it means doing more running plays, or it means whatever, he doesn't have the stats to back up diva behavior, and I'm not saying that he's a diva, but I'm not saying he's not. So I think that what we're gonna see is what Gruden and McLuhan and these guys want to do.
Yeah, you're probably right, and I'm assuming things will probably become a lot clearer on July 30th when they all come back and camp actually starts. But let's go on. So this is one that I want to talk about because it depresses me endlessly. Jay Gruden announced that Bill Callahan would be calling some running plays next year. Now, I know that that's not unprecedented, and I know that Bill Callahan came from doing that in Dallas. He actually had some of those responsibilities. But adding him to an already confusing process where Jay Gruden relays the plays to McVay, who then relays them to the quarterback, seems like a terrible idea. Am I wrong about this, guys?
No.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Well, what do we mean by, it depends what we mean by he's calling the running plays. Is Jay Gruden basically saying, let's run the ball, and then Bill Callahan just gets in there, or is it that he's designing a bunch of plays for Jay Gruden to have at
I think
the
it's
ready?
really going to be just, hey, Bill, I want to run the ball next play. Give me a good one. What do you want to do? And then Bill Callahan will give it to him, and he relays it to the quarterback. But it just seems too much to me.
Well, I wanted to know what Robbie, your experiences, in your big time college football experience about how plays get called, because none of us did that. A couple of us played high school football, and that just doesn't compare. And so, how do plays really get called? Because it does seem to me to be a totally convoluted process when Gruden is going to dream up the strategy, then he's going to tell McVay, and then it's going to go to the court. Then you're going to throw Callahan in there, and everybody's going to have to think for another few seconds. Seems like a huge mess. So how does it work?
The way I can only speak on how it worked for us, and it was kind of simplified in the play calling process. It was all hand signals. We'd run the play, and then we'd sprint up to the line of scrimmage, get set again, look over the coaches on the sideline, and they'd be flashing all kinds of crazy hand signs and
gang signs
and doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and we'd look at the O-line would look at one coach who's telling us what play we're running, whether it's protection or a running play. The quarterback coach was signaling to the quarterback, and there'd be someone next to him. They're doing dummy signals, and it was all every position group was getting their assignments. It wasn't like we'd huddle up, quarterback would get the play from the coach and relay the whole long tagline of everything in the play. It was for us.
So it sounds like you were doing the hurry up the whole time.
That's
that
what
right?
we ran. We ran the no huddle with hand signals telling us what we're doing.
It seems to me the most efficient thing is to have one person, be it Jay Gruden or Sean McVay or Kelly or someone else, calling the plays. And you want to try a hand at it, Kelly?
70 chip.
I have two hands, and I can signal to the entire team at once with both of my. I'll just give different finger positions for each group.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, it seems to me
finger positions.
That the best thing is to have one person calling the plays and one person only. That is the most efficient thing, and I think it's a hallmark of an inexperienced coach, Jay Gruden, to let a convoluted process continue.
I couldn't agree more. The situation that Callahan came from was they hired him in Dallas as the offensive coordinator and line coach, but I think that first year Garrett was the one calling the plays. He then took over, but only for a year. They took the play calling plays away from Callahan and gave them to, who's that guy, their passing coordinator, I think they called him, Scott Linehan.
We talked about this in the GM spotlight.
Right. Yeah. That's, at least they were, there was only one person at a time that had that responsibility. That's what he's coming from. So I guess my question is, I wonder if when he was hired, this was part of the deal he negotiated, because he always said he wanted play calling abilities. He always said that he wanted to go back to doing that when he lost them in Dallas. So I just wonder,
Well,
so now the truth kind of comes out here.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what this means for McVay in the end. McVay's always been an enigma to me when it comes to what his job is, and he's a really young guy. I think he's 28?
Yeah, something like that.
Yet he's got this pretty big title for someone at 28 years old. Yet he doesn't have play calling responsibility. He doesn't apparently do the run game now. So what is he doing? Why is he even involved in this whole process? That's where the enigma is to me. I kind of get Callahan getting this job and this role during the game day, but McVay being this middleman has something. It's just something I don't get.
So McVay's had a couple of different roles, right? He was a tight ends coach. Last year he was offensive coordinator / quarterback guru, which is another interesting thing in the mix. We have had play calling problems in Washington D.C. for a long time, right? We've got bingo callers, right? We've got all kinds of and I think though what I've seen out of Jay Gruden so far is that he has made a concerted effort to identify problems and address them. So his first year was definitely not ideal in a number of things. He identified the need to have a quarterback coach, went out and got a quarterback coach. He realized that he had the wrong staff on defense. He has replaced the staff on defense. And I think that one of these things, was definitely, and because he openly admitted it, is that, we didn't have the most effective means of calling plays. We were going through a sort of a chain thing, And I think that that's something that's going to get addressed. I think that what I've seen out of Jay Gruden so far is that, yeah, he's recognized the need to improve in different areas, and I hope and expect that he will.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. I don't know. I mean, McVay has kind of been the boy wonder. You know, somebody thinks a whole lot of Sean McVay, and somebody thinks he has a big future. And obviously, he's, you know, let's be real. I mean, he's too young to be a full-on, take control of everything offensive coordinator. They gave him the title, and that's wonderful. But he's probably pretty good at what he does, I think.
Yeah, I mean, what the word that I hear about him is, and by the way, I hadn't realized this. I don't know if we mentioned this on the show before, but he is Washington's longest tenured coach right now, which is like kind of shocking. Really? Yeah, he is the longest tenured coach in Washington right now, which is crazy to think. The players apparently love him. And I guess the way that they talk about it...
That's not always good, though.
Right. I mean, the players love him, but I guess the way they talk about it in practice is he runs practice, essentially. When they break into position groups, then the position coaches come in and take over. But he basically runs the practices. That's what I hear. It's weird to think nobody really knows anything about him.
Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, they were talking about how he was the one they're grooming, you know, for 10, 15 years down the road to become a head coach someday. Mm-hmm. They were saying that during the Shanahan era. I don't know if that's still some secret plan somewhere, filed in a back vault, but that's what they were saying initially. It's like, this is a 25-year-old prodigy, so we want to keep him.
That's what I've always heard about him, is he's a highly intelligent football guy. He knows the ins and outs of the game. Very X's and O's oriented. I mean, Cooley talked a lot about him on his radio show before, and
you should see his Madden scores. They're insane.
Oh my gosh! You know, if he's that good, if the history of the Washington Redskins is any guide, that means he will be soon with another team and head coaching somewhere else. You know?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. Well, besides that, guys, we have some thanks to give to a former Redskins quarterback from another era. Jason Campbell retired at age 32 this past week. He ended up playing for 5 different teams. He's finishing off a 1-year contract in Cincinnati, and it's time to hang up the cleats for him. What's your big takeaway from the Jason Campbell era of the Washington Redskins?
Let me ask this: how many different offenses has he played in his career?
Christ.
In his
total career,
his college career as well. He had 4 different coordinators in college as well, right? So by the time he was in his second year with the Redskins, he'd had at least 6 coordinators. You know,
You think he'd be prepared for the Washington culture then?
I think he had a different.
We were talking about that in the last topic. We were talking about how many times have we been changing our offensive coordinator and offensive system. It's been going all the way back to when he started here.
I think he had a different offensive coordinator every single year he was with the Redskins, I believe. Here's it, just so everybody knows, I like Jason Campbell, first of all. I thought he did as well as he could for us. You know, he's certainly not a superstar, but he finishes a career with the career stats. He was a 60.3% completion rate, passed for 16,771 yards, 87 touchdowns, and 60 interceptions. A 2.4% interception rate, which is pretty good, you know. I'd like everybody to sit and think for a minute and see what quarterbacks, since the Mark Rippon era ended, what quarterbacks I don't know how to phrase it, were better quarterbacks for the Redskins and contributed more to the Redskins than Jason Campbell. Probably since that time.
Probably Brad Johnson. Yeah, it might have been the only guy.
Less than 2 years.
Well, yeah,
less than 2 years
he
as a starter.
Certainly didn't stay a long time. Nobody stayed a long time, right? Dan Snyder took the team over, and he has been the most ADD owner since he got here than anybody I've ever seen in the NFL my entire life, right? So he's been bouncing between different coaches. He's arguing with coaches. He's bringing in different quarterbacks, this, that, and the fourth thing. Campbell stayed for quite a while, and I like that. What I like about him, he came in, he did his job, he didn't bitch about it, he didn't complain. He was given the short end of the stick in his entire career, you know, with the constant, there was no consistency. He didn't have any players around him who were any good. He himself was not a particularly great player, but he came in and did his job. My favorite thing that he did, I really enjoyed his time with the Commodores. I thought he was very, you know, he contributed as a singer, just the quality of his voice. was wonderful. I may be confusing with Lionel Richie.
Morning.
You're not confusing him with Lionel Richie.
Well, I'll say I got two things to say about Jason Campbell's career. First off, we were talking about who was he better than since the glory days, and the only name that you can say is Brad Johnson. And if you look back at every quarterback we've had, they're the only two in that recent chunk of history who've played a full season for the team and started all 16
Mark Brunell
games.
must have too, though, right? Didn't he? He
Nope.
didn't.
Nope. Brunell always split time with Ramsey or Campbell.
Oh, wow.
Because Brunell
Yeah.
would be the other one I'd
And
throw into
so-
the discussion. I think that would be up
Yeah,
there.
I think so too. But I think he and Ramsey went back and forth one year, and then he got hurt 1 year, and then Jason Campbell.
And
came
it's,
along,
by the way,
and,
truly
that's
I mean,
what
it
happened.
is pathetic.
Yeah.
Just pathetic beyond all comprehension that we're even having this
The most
conversation.
depressing conversation
Well,
I've had, and I've had some really
my
depressing
other
conversations.
point about Jason Campbell is a lot of people seem to have a lot of hate for Jason Campbell for his time.
I don't
here,
understand
which
it.
I've never understood. And they're like, well, he's not a franchise quarterback. Yeah, he wasn't a franchise quarterback, but if you look at all those numbers you listed, he's just above the average in every category.
Yeah.
You know what? 60.1%. That's exactly just above average for completion rating. He's just at around the 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio,
Working
which is
man's
exactly
quarterback.
what you want.
I would say that
Yeah.
if the team had kept Jason Campbell and not gotten a hold of Donovan McNabb, Beck and Rex Grossman and they had kept him for those years, I think the team would have been better.
Oh, absolutely. Those 2 years especially.
Yeah, it very well could have been. I was going to ask you guys this. So 2007 was obviously Campbell's big year. I mean, that was the playoff run. Campbell, I think it was week 14 that he had that injury. It was like a dislocated kneecap that knocked him out of it. So Collins came in. Let me ask you this, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but that was also the year that Sean Taylor died, right?
Yeah.
About midway through the season. So let me ask you this. If that hadn't happened, if Campbell hadn't been injured, would our playoff run back then have been any different?
Yes.
Maybe.
Oh,
You never know.
I think so. If Taylor had been there in the playoffs, Campbell kept playing. I think they could have won a game, in the playoffs, or won a couple games in the playoffs, rather.
I don't know.
I don't think they would have gone to the championship game or anything.
I don't know that.
I don't know. I
honestly,
think they could have gotten there.
I don't know that we make the playoffs if Taylor hadn't been shot and killed. I think that from a personnel standpoint, absolutely having Sean Taylor on the field makes you a better team. But something happened to that team when Sean was shot. And and that team came together in a way that they had not been playing earlier in the season. You look at the record on that season, if I recall correctly, we kind of went on a tear after that happened. And
that's true.
And
You're right. That's
I'm
true.
not
I
sure
think we went
that
4-1 after that happened, or something.
Something like that.
Or
yeah.
3-1.
They played
With
extremely
Todd
well.
Collins as the quarterback. And by the way, Campbell's best season, I think, in Washington was probably his last season, 2009, 64.5% completion rate, and passed for over 3,600 yards.
Wow.
And 20 touchdowns that year.
That's when he had the streak of, 8 games in a row with no interceptions.
Yeah, something
too.
like that. Because
Wow.
he ended up with...
Or he had like the most consecutive passes without an interception.
I don't think it was that year because he finished with 15 interceptions that year, and in 2008 he only had 6 interceptions over 16 games.
That
So
might have
that
been
was
the
maybe
year there.
maybe it was that year.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? I mean, 3,600 yards and almost 65% completion. That's not too bad. I mean,
No.
that'll get you to the Pro Bowl in some years.
Yeah, that's not terrible.
I think I just like to say thanks, Jason Campbell, and good luck in your future
He
endeavors,
was
whatever
always
it may hold. He's a
very nice guy.
nice guy,
Yeah.
classy guy. Didn't cause problems. Came in to do his job. He wasn't the greatest quarterback ever, but he tried hard. And I
Dated Miss Washington
he
D.C.
did. I know.
I
think
he wasn't an awful quarterback. We tend to highlight the fact that he wasn't fantastic and that he was consistent sort of in these things. But he wasn't a bad quarterback. And
He didn't mark Sanchez off the
he wasn't
joint.
Donovan McNabb, right? He wasn't throwing the ball in the third every 2 minutes.
Did you say Mark Sanchez up the joint?
He didn't mark
I
Sanchez
like
up
that.
the joint.
Good.
No butt fumbles from Campbell.
I think the best year. I'm sitting here looking at Brad Johnson's stats, and in 1999 he passed for over 4,000 yards, and so I would assume that's probably the best quarterbacking year since the Super Bowl since our Super Bowl era. I would think. That 1 year by Johnson.
Probably
Anyway.
true. God, you know what I was just realizing too? I had totally forgotten. Kelly reminded me when you said that he had gone on a tear. I'd forgotten that the Seahawks back then had also... They have such a history of knocking the Redskins out of the playoffs after we're coming off a string of good games. This all started back then, didn't it?
It sure did.
All right, well, moving on from that, we have some other sad news. Clinton Portis fallen on some hard financial times, guys. Steve, we might need your lawyerly help to give some advice to Clinton here.
Don't spend more than you earn.
Legally, you're
well,
fucked.
yeah, but it's more than that. So just like another athlete who you like to wear flamboyant costumes in press conferences, I'm talking, of course, about Dennis Rodman. Portis seems to owe some serious child support, and to mitigate that debt, he, I guess, gambled his way further into debt. So that is the story.
Always a good
yeah,
plan.
Always a good. What could
Planning.
possibly go wrong? I believe it's pretty bad. He owed. Oh, and that's not even to mention the federal income taxes he owed from a couple years. I think he owed like $400,000 or something from 2006. So he's in pretty rough shape. Why does this seem to happen to so many athletes, guys?
Well, I think that, first of all, the obvious answer is that you're handing guys who, in large part, don't even have college educations or degrees, at least, a lot of money right up front when many of them came from poor backgrounds. They came from families that, are split apart, and families that didn't have money. They have agents who are just piranhas, who are just trying to make money on them. Don't often always have their best interests at heart. They have their boys from the neighborhood around them who just want money. I don't think these guys really have the support structure and the education in place to fully understand how to handle a lot of money, because it's not like these guys are making $30,000 a year and they're trying to pay their mortgage or their rent and keep the lights on. They're making millions of dollars, and it's a lot of money to have up front. I've been involved with a couple lottery winners, who did the right thing and asked for advice on this stuff. But the ones I'm thinking of just could not get past the fact that, it's so much money. I distinctly remember having a conversation with one of them and saying, okay, I don't even remember the guy's name. Said, okay, we've got your financial advisor lined up here, and we're going to talk about this and that. And he cut us off, and he said, yeah, I don't care about any of that. I just want to know if I can buy my mom a car. And that was, he kept coming back to that and coming back to that. And I think that's what you get with these guys. They make a lot of money, and all they see is, I got to spend. Clinton Portis, look at what Portis had. He had a big condo at the top of a building in Miami. He had a fancy tricked out truck. He had sports cars. He had, kids. He owed child support. I don't think he was ever taught at any point the right way to handle a lot of money. And obviously his agent didn't do him any favors. And the question really becomes, what responsibility does the NFL and the team have? The NFL provides financial education. It's not like you can expect Dan Snyder to sit down and teach all these guys how to handle money. At some point, they're just going to have to learn.
So a couple of years ago, I happened to see some sort of a celebrity cribs show or something like that, where they basically take cameras and walk you through celebrities' houses. I don't remember what the name of the show was, but it was terrible. But they were doing Clinton Portis' house, and so I watched it, and it was ridiculous to me because Portis was super paranoid about having people in his house with cameras. He was like, no, don't look over there. No, don't look at that room. Don't show that room. It was like he wanted to be on the show. He wanted to be that sort of celebrity, but he was also very, very secretive. And he said some very enigmatic stuff. He said, when I retire, this is while he was still playing football, he said, when I retire, I'm going to drop some news that is going to shock the world. He never did shock the world with that news. But looking at his house, it was just, it was a little bit sad to see. He had, for a straight man, he had more highly polished boots and shoes and and his clothes. He had closets upon closets upon closets. And you could tell the guy he didn't have any perspective on what it meant to have money and what you're supposed to be using money for. and what the point is of being. He didn't really have, he didn't have anywhere to entertain friends. He didn't have anything about being a social person. He just had stuff coming out of his ass, just tons and tons and tons of stuff. And I agree with what Steve said. I think you get these kids, they come up, they don't really get educated about the money. The people who are talking to them about how to handle their money are generally the people who are trying to get it from them.
That's exactly
you
right.
get a lot of people telling you, don't forget where you're from. We're the people who looked out for you and raised you up and made sure that you could be this NFL player, so you owe us. There's a lot of that goes on, and I don't really know what the solution is to it. These are grown men, they're adults, and they have to be responsible for what they do. Better education, I think, at and not necessarily at the college level, because in college they're focused on playing football, not on getting educated. I think educating kids at a young level. I never took classes in high school about how do you manage your money. What is an intelligent thing to buy? What is a stupid thing to blow your money on? These are questions we all face as we grow up as adults, and nobody's teaching that stuff as kids.
Well, ideally, your parents should be teaching it to you, but like we said, these people come from disadvantaged backgrounds where that's probably not what's happening. And, the cycle of poverty is the parents probably never learned that themselves. Mm-hmm. So, where are you going to go? I've said it before, or I said it earlier about this topic, and I know Steve and Kelly, you guys kind of disagree with me. If I were one of these owners in the NFL, I would start to feel ashamed by how often this is happening at this point. I know it's not every player, and I know it's not probably even a majority, but it seems like every year, every team has one of these stories come out.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, if I were an owner, I would want to take the time to, especially after you sign a guy to a big contract, $50 million, sit down with him and just say, this money, if you spend it right, can save your family, your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren if you save it and invest it wisely.
Right.
And I don't know if they'll listen, but I really feel like owners should take the time, if they care about these players, to at least try and have that discussion with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like for every Alfred Morris type who's still driving his, 95 Corolla, you have, 10 Clinton Portises. Have you guys ever seen the movie Boiler Room?
No,
by any chance?
But I'm dying to now.
Yeah, you should. So there's just a scene in that movie that reminded me so much of what you were saying, Kelly, about people with money not having any idea how to use it. So it's like a big stockbroker firm, and the main character goes to one of the guys' houses, and he walks in, and there's a huge room with nothing but a tanning bed and a bowl of tangerines in it. And the voiceover is these guys had money and no idea what to do with it. And it just seems that, it just reminded me of that scene. You got to watch that movie.
Right.
Great movie.
To Alex's point about the owner, look, if an owner wants to take the time to help some of these guys, fine, I'm all for it. But an owner has to be careful about that from a legal standpoint, because you don't want. If I was advising him, I'd say, mentor all the people you want, but be careful to not make people think you're showing favoritism between one employee or another, because that will only cause problems. And if somebody gets mad, and that may not just the players, are you mentoring the office staff? Are you giving them the same benefit of your advice? That's another, that's a big question when you're the owner of the company. It's only going to cause problems if you are favoring one person who's not an immediate subordinate. So unless you're going to do that for everybody, I would be really careful and do that in limited doses. That's number one. And number two is, these owners are busy people, okay? With very rare exception, these owners have business empires that they're tending to, and they're not spending, every day dealing with the team. The team I worked with, the owner was never there, never in the office ever, because he had a ton of other business interests he was dealing with, and he left the team kind of to his staff. Now, there may be differences, like the Bus family in LA with the Lakers, that is their thing. But they don't have as much time as you and I would have, because we just are regular people. These guys are billionaires with empires they're running. So they don't have time to mentor tons of people. They don't. It's just reality, folks.
Kind of interesting thing is the timing of all this is interesting because HBO has this brand new TV show coming out with The Rock in it about this exact thing.
Is that what that show's about?
Yeah,
it's called Ballers, I think.
Yeah, it is.
It looked good. Yeah,
and The Rock plays a guy that used to be in the NFL and now works as a money advisor and puts these athletes' money to areas where they can keep an income and not have it run out like it appears to have done for Clinton. So I just found that pretty interesting how the timing of that show coming out and then this report of Clinton Portis going out. I don't know.
Has the first episode of that come out? I wanted to check it out at some point.
It was either last Sunday or this Sunday.
I don't think it's come out. I think it's coming out on next weekend, I think.
Something like that.
To the point about the idea that the owners should or shouldn't or can or can't sit down and talk with the players, I think that it happens more often than you think. We've had a history, especially here in Washington. We're trying to get the owner away from the players. This has not been a problem here for the Redskins, right? It's not that Snyder doesn't have time to talk to the people. I think that I think that part of the deal here is that Snyder himself is a fairly young owner, but I definitely think that he's the kind of guy that sits down and says, "Listen, son, I know an awful lot about money, and you're making a lot of money, and I want you to be successful in your life." I think that those conversations are happening. My guess is that when it comes down to the player having to decide, am I going to listen to my friends and family, or am I going to listen to this, old white guy? It's sort of I think that they get pulled toward the friends and family. These are the people they grew up with, interact with. And, the friends and family are telling you, listen, dude, we're going to throw the biggest party ever. Listen, dude, I need this, or, whatever it might be. That money can go very quickly if you're not able to tell people no. And it's very hard when you're the one person who has been super successful you're going to have to be the asshole and tell people, no, I'm not going to give you money. And these are people who have been very loyal to you throughout your life.
Right. It's a great point.
I think
who was that, by the way, whose mother just basically stole all their money?
Mine.
Remind me who that was.
Buchanan.
Yeah, that was you.
Yeah, I think it was Phil Buchanan.
Yeah.
I think you guys are taking a more optimistic view on this in terms of what the owners would do than is reality. Just my opinion. You guys have to understand this is the NFL office is a business office. Mm-hmm. It's not a family. It's a business, and they're employees, and these guys are treated as employees. It's not as collegial as you might think once you leave the locker room. It is if you walk into any business in America, and aside from the fact that the lobby's a little nicer, it is like any other business. And I really don't think these owners, there's maybe exceptions, but I don't think very many owners are, giving scholarly and fatherly advice to. But
I think
guys.
that Dan Snyder is one of those exceptions. Dan Snyder's in this because he wants to be friends with athletes. It's been one athlete after another that he's cozied up to. He likes having them for lavish dinners. He likes wining and dining them. He likes having celebrities in the booth. He wants to be popular. He wants to be with popular people. He wants to hang out with Tom Cruise and Dale Jr. and these guys, and that's who he is. And so I think that he is the exception. I agree with you. I think most of these guys are businessmen. They're busy being businessmen and making money, which is what they're very good at doing and what they enjoy doing. But I think that Dan Snyder wants to be popular.
Yeah, I mean, to Steve's point, though, that could be, in Snyder's case, sort of a business decision. I mean, he wants to be seen, popular and seen as friends with these guys, but does he truly want to be their friend? I mean, does he truly want to give them financial advice and help them be more successful people? I kind of doubt it.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. None of us really know Snyder. I mean, we only know what's said about him. But I was just gonna say, by the way, this whole conversation is making me feel like major props to Pierre Garçon, who is not only doing the pizza business thing and doing it legitimately, but he's trying to keep his own name off of it so that it has some longevity beyond his football career.
Right.
Major props to a guy that can do that in, as we've been pointing out, a industry where it's tough to hang on to your money sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Has anybody ever tried his pizza, by the way?
No,
Yes.
I
Guys in
haven't.
DC?
No,
They don't.
no.
I have.
They
I
don't
haven't
deliver
seen
to
any of
LA.
the
I've
restaurants yet.
tried, but he's not willing to bring it out to Orange County.
Sean or Alex is going to have to go visit it and give us a report.
I've been there.
Actually,
Yeah.
Let's do a Hogsty Reviews Pierre Garçon's Pizza episode.
It's actually pretty good. It's like a pizza version of Chipotle where you can get whatever toppings you want, whatever cheese and sauce and all that.
That's the new hot thing in DC.
Yeah.
Those places are everywhere.
So good. You and pizza? Special little advertising
The only thing
for
I'd
you.
say though is that it's very small. I mean, maybe it's just because I have a big appetite, but one left me like it was just a small snack.
You're a large man, Robbie.
Yeah,
It was
six-
tasty.
All
six-
small
It
pizzas.
was
6'5", 300 pounds of appetite may not be everyone
One
else's
pizza
appetite,
wasn't
though,
enough for
Robbie.
Robbie Duncan. What is this a new thing? Being able to choose your toppings for the pizza? I'm fairly
Yeah,
certain this is
they're
fairly
all
standard.
over the place in DC now.
No, it's like
when was that not a
think of it
thing?
like as an assembly line thing, like when you're at Subway and you get the pizza and then it goes
Right.
down the line and you can kind of choose as you go
Seriously?
and take
So
it
instead
like
Here's
of
like
telling
6
the
different
waitress what
sauces you
want-
can put on it.
Instead of
stuff
telling the
like that.
waitress what you want on your pizza, it's a different thing because you walk down a line.
all right, well, we're not going to mail you any pizza then, Kelly. Fine.
Kelly,
You
the
don't have
thing
to have
is,
any.
It's a lot more like crazy options these days,
Well, that's
and
true.
whereas usually it's like just marinara sauce, they'll usually have pesto, Alfredo. They'll have like some weird truffle oil they'll put on it.
I'm
that
going
kind
to
of
put
thing.
on my.
I think I'm going to surprise you guys by this, but I am conservative about my pizza choices as well. I
What?
know that
No
must
way.
I'm actually as a
I don't vary a
as
lot.
a political liberal, Steve and I agree on very few things when it comes to sort of cultural choices and things like that. But I'm totally with you 100% on this. I like sausage and pepperoni. I'm pretty good with that. Don't put sushi on my pizza. Don't put fruit on my pizza. Just let it be pizza for
see.
God's sake. Leave one thing alone.
My go-to ever since I was 12 years old is bacon, shrimp, and mushrooms. I call it my
No,
kosher
don't put
special.
seafood on pizza.
Ugh.
That's gross,
Yeah,
man.
I'm with Kelly.
God, look at this. The pizza issue is really reaching across the aisle.
Clearly a
and bringing people
generational
together.
thing.
I love this. As we seem to have moved on here, should we talk a little bit now? Alex, Robbie, and I last night were down at Nats Park. We watched the Nationals defeat. Christ, who were they
Pittsburgh.
playing? Pittsburgh, Schittsburg.
Pirates.
They played like Schittsburg last night
Schittsburg.
too. Had a great time at the game, but we were thinking, and the stands there, about how good an experience that stadium is compared to a FedEx Field. FedEx Field sucks, guys, and I actually did some research into it, but let me get your opinions. Am I the only one who feels this way?
No.
No.
No. I think
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I've never met anybody who likes FedEx Field.
Right. I mean, you can't. There's nothing you can say about it. It is a concrete monstrosity with beige walls and beige floors and beige ceilings. It's just a bowl of seats. That's all it is. There's no flair. There's no design. There's no style. FedEx Field is truly the Jay Gruden offense of NFL stadiums.
Oh my goodness.
Let's go back in history just a little bit here. Remember when I was talking about the stadium lease and all that a few weeks ago to explain how that worked? Yeah, when the thing was built, you guys have to understand it was on a budget. Because there was a little bit of county and state money kicked in, but the huge bulk of the construction costs came from Jack Kent Cooke himself, and there's a massive construction loan, and that's why we're going to be stuck in the stadium until 2026 probably at least.
Oy.
But some of the flares and the design things that you're talking about were not done specifically because there just wasn't the money for it, and also. FedEx Field seemed to be the last of the old style stadiums. There weren't a lot of fancy stadiums, like the one up in Detroit is super fancy. The Ravens Stadium is really nice.
Yeah.
Those didn't exist back
No,
then.
they
And
didn't.
back when FedEx was designed and built, it was sort of, I would call it maybe league average. You know, and it's aged badly in the years, and they never fix the parking, and the traffic is awful, and the food is bad, and it's expensive, and all that stuff. But the design of the stadium itself is from another era.
It's just big.
Yeah,
It's
and
purely big.
the only claim it really had back in the day was it was the largest capacity stadium in the NFL, and then that went to shit when Jerry made his Playhouse, and I think there's another one that's bigger than ours now. Plus, we keep downsizing.
Right.
Houston, I think, is bigger now.
Yeah,
Houston,
and
no. Houston is not even 70 in football capacity.
Oh, really? I thought it was bigger.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. They had to add seats for it for the Super Bowl.
they've tried making it more accessible for fans to go to with the adding of the Silver Line, but then you have to walk like 2 miles to even get to the stadium.
Right.
I've done that many times, and it
Hate
is
that.
just miserable.
It's it's a bad stadium. It's a bad experience. It's poorly located. It's all these things. They for a while the town was named Raljon, which was just embarrassing.
I liked Raljon.
The thing that I don't like about it, it was built by Jack Kent Cooke, who had experienced very successful football teams, and a 90,000 seat stadium made sense, right? Because you couldn't back then. You couldn't get enough people into the stadiums. And what's terrible is that the team has just gone so far downhill since that time that it's people aren't showing up to games, and the result is the stadium just looks dead and pathetic and embarrassing because it's so massive and so empty. At the same time that it's emptier than other stadiums that have the same number of people in them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just going to compare some things from what we had last night. And granted, going to a Nats game and baseball in general is always going to be a little different than a football game. People don't go get food as much during football games as they do baseball games. I understand that. But at the same time, the food options you have at a place like Nats Park are just incredible.
Yeah.
It's so good. So good.
I mean, Robbie, you went and got Hard Times. I got some Ben's Chili Bowl last night. You've got... Now, I wish they would go back to having a Five Guys in the stadium instead of Shake Shack, but that's just because of my DC pride thing.
Oh, I love I love some Shake Shack.
You guys are so spoiled. This is ridiculous. Shake Shack, Five Guys. I'm complaining because I don't have the right kind of pesto sauce on my stadium pizza. And this is ridiculous. You get a hot dog.
Oh, well, the stadium pizza, I think, is Papa John's now. Is that right?
You get a hot dog.
I think so.
You get some popcorn. You get a Coke, or you get a beer now that you're a grown man.
Well, you have
totally
probably
with
about
Kelly.
40 different beer options at
You don't need
Nats
40.
Park
You
at
get
this
Miller
point.
Lite, and that's pretty much what you drink. That's
Well,
what you get.
I
your
have
girlfriend
a
doesn't
penis.
wanna be
I don't
drinking.
drink light beer.
If you
and,
want to get the
I'm totally
fancy
with
option,
Kelly.
you get the Heineken, because that was the fancy option.
Look,
No, see,
all
I
want at a
I got
all
a
I
Dos
want-
Equis.
all I
got,
want at a
let's see,
football
3-star,
game.
and then I got a couple
What in the
shandies.
hell happened to
All I want at a
sports?
football game is some pizza. I don't drink alcohol, so I'll take a soda.
take your Coke.
I only wanted some pizza, maybe a hot dog, and maybe some popcorn. I don't really even want a bunch of fancy food. I'm not going to get a chili bowl. I'm not going to get a salad. The food stuff just doesn't really do it for
No.
me. At a
You eat
football
the
game.
peanuts.
I'll say,
that
you
they
try
throw
these-
They
you
throw peanuts at you, a pack of peanuts. They throw a pack of peanuts at you. You hand your money down the aisle. The guy gets his money. You get your peanuts. If you're not very coordinated, you probably get a black eye. And that's how it's supposed to go. What the hell are you talking about? Five Guys? Do they have an app yet where you can have food delivered to your seat?
I think they do in the luxury boxes,
Oh,
yes.
for Christ's sake!
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'll say that, and this is just a little thing I noticed, the Nats, for like the third time since the stadium has opened, have totally redesigned their team store. And, that's a minor thing, really, but last time I was at FedEx Field, their team stores are still in tents inside the stadium. And you've built a whole stadium, and that's what you're going with? You're selling merchandise out of a tent?
I miss RFK so bad.
Me
Yeah.
too. I miss it. I don't want the fancy stuff. Look, and I think I cut you off, Robbie. I'm sorry.
That's
but,
cool.
I mean, I don't want fancy in a stadium. What I want from a stadium is easy parking, good traffic flow, good sight lines, good pizza and good hot dogs. That's what I want from the stadium. It's as simple as that.
Well, here's my thing. You
Sorry, guys,
talk
I was
about-
asleep. I was listening to Steve's description of a good stadium. Sorry.
I'll say this, Steve.
You suck, Sean.
You and Steve, Steve and Kelly are not talking about the fancy food and all that, but you try that chili nachos that I had last night in Nationals Park,
You'll
and I
change your
swear to
tune.
God, you will not want
No
anything
thanks.
else at a stadium. But got a funny story, actually, that was from earlier this week when I went to a different Nationals game. The vendor people walking up and down the aisles compared to like people at FedEx Field are so much more into it, and they enjoy what they're doing. Like, I got to tell you, there was this guy that when I went there on Wednesday, very 70s guy, had a mustache, almost like if it was any farther, it'd be a handlebar, and a mullet with a trucker hat. He was going up and down the aisle yelling, "Hey, beer man! Hey, beer man!" When someone wanted to buy something from him, he'd slam that thing down. "You want a Bud Light? All right, here's your Bud Light." And then, funniest thing, he was going down another aisle, and there was another guy going up and down my aisle. And the guy was yelling, beer man was yelling across the aisle to the other guy. He's like, "Hey, you got any Bud Light over there?" And the other guy's like, "You know I don't have any Bud Light." And then the guy goes... The guy, beer man, yells back, "You don't patronize me, you son of a bitch!" It was I swear, the funniest thing I've ever seen at a sporting event. It was just classic.
So in other words, beep beep from the Washington Post TI blog was
Beer Man.
Yeah, he's beer man. Speaking of those vendors, there's a guy. He's been one of those guys forever at Nets Park. He has an electric beer opener that he built himself. And it's like got a backpack with a power pack on it, and he walks around with this thing attached to his hand like he's some kind of bad cyborg. And anytime anyone orders a beer, this thing like cuts off the top of the beer can for you.
Oh, that's good.
It's the most
Bad
So you can
cyborg.
slice your lip on the beer can. That's good. It's very helpful.
Then you're gonna have a lawsuit against the Nats.
He's been there
call
forever
me.
too, which is the amazing thing.
All right, well,
Okay.
God, I think we all can agree that FedEx Field sucks, the big one. And,
Oh sure.
yeah.
But it's for different reasons, though. I think it sucks because it's hard to get in and out of, and it's too big, and the traffic on the Beltway is just awful after games, and none of that's really, necessary. That's why I think it stinks. I don't think it stinks for the same reason that you guys do. And I think, Kelly, you're probably with me more on it. I don't really care about the food whatsoever.
Well, I think that it's if you go to some of these new stadiums, you'll see the same thing with the food now, where they're all going in that high-end direction, and it's part of teams knowing that they need to get people out there.
Yeah,
It all plays into that.
I want to go to a sport. Football used to be tough. Football fans used to be tough. I don't want to go to the Galleria to watch a football game. This isn't, it's not why I'm going. I don't care what the quality of the store is. To be honest with you, though, I don't follow baseball because I grew up in a time when Washington didn't have baseball. But I enjoy going to baseball games because baseball games feel right to me when I go there. I don't enjoy going to football games. It's nowadays you have to, you got to bring some kind of an iPad tablet with you. And it used to be that you would bring your little portable radio and you would listen to what was going on because you needed that play-by-play, because you just can't, when you grew up watching it on TV, trying to watch it on the field is a very different experience. So I don't tend to go to football games, but I'm definitely not going to go to a football game if it's going to be like catered by Panera Bread.
right.
It just that doesn't work for me. The two just don't go hand in hand.
Yeah, football games are way too expensive, anymore if you're taking more than one person with you. But I think what the single biggest advantage to going to a game live to me is you can see the entire field.
Yeah.
If you really want to watch the game and watch the plays develop, there's no better way to do it, and that is why I like going to the games more than any other.
Yeah, but you can't rewind it and watch it again.
I can do that later.
Yeah, it's not.
There are times. The last game I was at was when we got shut out by the Rams, and there were A couple things that I didn't pick up on live in the game that people were freaking out about, the whole coin toss issue and little things like that. I was like, the game was terrible. We got shut out. And then everyone's complaining about how the Rams sent out all these guys for the coin toss. I'm like, you didn't notice that in the game.
There's things like that. Like I went to a game, I think it was a Cowboys game, which was kind of awesome. Is at Texas Stadium, 2002 Thanksgiving. We were killing them, and then they turned around and destroyed us.
That was the game where both teams wore home colors, right?
It may well have been, but one thing happened. I think it was at that game. Might have been another game, but at some point I saw our field goal kicker was out there punting, and I had no idea, well, what the hell is our kicker doing the punting, and it wasn't until I got home and watched some Sports Center and saw what was going on. Our punter, apparently there had been a block kick, and our punter went down to go get it, and somebody's knee came up in his face mask and broke his nose, and he had to leave the game. So our kicker came on and did the punting, and he was, for a guy who kicks footballs for a living, he was about as good at this as Joe Theismann was. And
John Hall. That would have been John Hall probably back then,
That might have
right?
been John Hall. It did not go well for him.
Well, any final thoughts on the stadium issue before we wrap it up here, guys?
Nachos and chili cheese dogs are amazing. And
that's the way to go.
Steve
The moral of today's story.
Kelly are just old and don't understand the beauty of
give me a hot
chili on
dog.
everything.
You could put chili and cheese on a hot dog at RFK. So I'm. With
I have a quick funny story actually. I got invited to sit in a luxury box for not a Redskin game, for the team I used to work for, and there was all this catered food in this box. It wasn't the owner's box; it was just another box. And it was it's all free in the luxury box, every kind of food you imagine. And what I was most excited about was the fact that they had hot dogs there. And so I think I had 10 hot dogs during the course of the game, and that was the entirety of what I ate.
You went Kobayashi on that place.
You went Laribus.
I had 10 hot dogs. There was a running bet amongst the people I was there how many hot dogs I was going to eat in 4
How
quarters.
many hot dogs can you fit in your mouth at once, Steve? We all know you tried.
But I ignored all their other fancy. I ignored all the other fancy food they had and went for the football game food, which is supposed to be hot dogs. And that's what I ate. I think I had 8, not 10, just to be fair about it. But I don't want all that other stuff. I want hot dogs. I want football food.
Well, when we go to a game together, then you can't have any of my assorted cheeses that I bring with me.
Tragedy.
You can't have any of my
strikes.
crudité.
My
Grapes.
craft brew sampler
Maybe I'll
won't
bring
be
you tea
available
with
to
your
you.
teaches. Yeah.
All right, well, great. So that was the Hogsty. Hopefully you learned a little something. I've got to do the usual plug here. There's so many ways you guys can reach us, and I hope you do. On Facebook at facebook.com/hailtothehogs. Get with us on Twitter at thehogsty. We're also on thehogsty.com. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/thehogsty. And make sure you're emailing us at thehogsty@gmail.com. Questions, feedback, stuff you want us to talk about. Shoot it over to us and we'll get it on the show. Until next time, we'll see you. This has been the Hogsty.
Peace.
Great work, everybody.
Nice one, guys.
Clinton Portis probably owes you some money.